Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Dale KEOWN Day, so we'll be looking at the next issue in his Incredible Hulk run that I own. That is this issue here, issue 379, cover dated March 1991. I do want to mention before I get into this issue a few things. First, unfortunately, I mentioned it before in past videos, I do not have issue 377, which is kind of a hard issue to find. And it's kind of the last chapter of the Warring Hulks storyline, where eventually they all merge into one Hulk. That we'll be seeing the result of that in this issue here, because really 379 should kind of follow 377. What they did with 378 is a fill-in issue, different artist, and kind of cuts into the storyline, because really logically in the continuity of it, 379 picks up from issue 377 pretty much directly. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before I talk too much about the cover in the comic, I do want to bring up something that's been mentioned in the comments. My pronunciation of certain names, I might be wrong, I might be right on some of them, I'm not quite sure, so I'm throwing this out there kind of as a quick debate. You know, do you pronounce it, for example, with Dale KEOWN, I say KEOWN, as the phonetic kind of writing here. I've been told in some of the comments that it should be KEOWN. Okay, and then when it comes to Todd McFarlane, you heard how I pronounce it, McFarlane. I've been told that it's McFarlane. So this is a good example of how the English language can be frustrating to someone who has a different mother tongue or native tongue, or that English is their second language. There's no clear rule here, because if I look at this and I'm supposed to say KEOWN, right, and really pronounce this out, well, I would assume that with the name here, I would say McFarlane and spell that out as well. But no, I'm being told by certain people that it's McFarlane. But then if this is McFarlane, this should be KEOWN, right? So certain contradictions in the English language, just throwing that out there. Let me know what you think and how you would pronounce those. As a fun kind of little added bonus here, in this grammar lesson, I've added the classic magneto, right? And also the tomato, and tomato. Funny enough, you know, as much as like this whole acceptance thing, if we can say tomato or tomato, I don't mean meet or have ever met many people who say tomato. But anyways, I've kind of laid it out real quick. If you have any thoughts on that, let me know in the comments. And we'll move on with this issue here. Starting off with a great cover. Still, unfortunately, the last vestige of Bob McLeod inking Dale KEOWN on the Incredible Hulk. Although on this cover, it does look pretty close to what I think Dale KEOWN would pull off if he himself was inking this. A lot of the hatching seems fine enough. Still a little thick compared to what KEOWN usually does. But I wouldn't mistake this for any other artist here. It's a pretty quintessential Dale KEOWN illustration. Again, we've got the classic kind of close-up face here. I don't know if KEOWN actually invented that. Or was the first to do it. I don't think so, but he kind of popularized it, I think, just by doing it here, and also using that kind of layout for his first issue of Pitt a few years later. Has that same kind of composition, except with the Pitt character, obviously. So swiping himself or homaging himself, something McFarlane does a lot of, and Liefeld as well. I do think this kind of integration of the different Hulk personalities, so Bruce Banner, the Savage Hulk, the Grey Hulk, I think this is the spacefaring Hulk, where he's a little smarter, but basically kind of hinting at, you know, this visual representation here of the idea of these personalities kind of merged into one green, what they call the smart Hulk from this period. So that's it for the cover. Let's crack her open, have a look inside. Okay, so we've got kind of a B storyline being set up here. Nothing that really interests me much. I've never been one for starting or enjoying a comic that kind of just starts right off the bat, boof, with like kind of this kind of page. Not saying I'm against it and there's no good reason to do it. I just personally think as any kind of first page of a comic book, it's just not, it feels like you're being thrown into the middle of something rather than the beginning of something. Even if this is, you know, if this were a second or third part to a storyline or something, you're kind of just thrown into it, which maybe to some, in some comics can have a good effect, and that's kind of what you want. I just find it a little odd here. But we quickly move on to obviously our subject of interest for this issue. Let's go through the credits, because I do want to talk about the change in the art team here. So we've got writer Peter David as usual, penciler Dale KEOWN, new inker jumping on. They don't really make a fuss about it. Sometimes they would in these Marvel comics, but I don't see much note of it here. But Mark Farmer comes on as inker, and I think it's a great improvement on the art. I'll talk about it more just as I finish off the credits for this issue. So the letterer is Jay Rosen, and colorist, I assume was it Gwyneth or Gwyn? I think that's her name, Oliver. So right away, I think with the splash page, which in a way, you know, if we didn't have the B story of that first page, this would have probably been the first page, a good first page. We see the difference in the art right away from past issues where Bob McLeod was inking Dale Keown. I do think and as we look through this issue, I'll mention it, Dale Keown maybe takes advantage of the fact that, you know, this is kind of a key change in the storyline. The art team has changed, and I feel like art-wise himself with the layouts and stuff, he's now slowly moving towards that more bombastic, exciting kind of style that he would fully move into when he moves on to Image Comics, right? He's starting to get a little more illustrative, a little more hatching all over the place. And I think the new inker, Mark Farmer, is a much better match on the art for that. I mean, we're close to kind of pure Dale Keown. I do think he's much more faithful as an inker to what Keown lays down with his pencils. Unfortunately, Doc Savage still wearing that costume that I really think is just horrible. I think Byrne came up with that one. Not 100% sure, but I got to say, this costume is horrible. I think somewhere along this run, if I'm not mistaken, he comes back to his classic costume, which I think is definitely more fun and I don't want to say cooler, but definitely better than this one. So yeah, the idea basically with this story is that the Hulk, fully integrated now, you know, intelligent, confident, maybe probably a little obnoxious and egotistical. Those were some of the aspects of the Hulk's personality in this form that he takes. And he's, I guess, celebrating the fact that now all his warring sides are kind of integrated into one, and he wants to go out and have some drinks. I thought this, you know, Peter David's known for kind of, you know, some funny lines in his comics. I thought this was kind of funny. Barkeep, drinks for the house, on me. Bruce, you don't have any money. Drinks for the house, on him. So right away with the layouts and stuff, we're getting bigger panels, less panels on each page, more tilted angles you'll see throughout this issue. And I just think generally the depiction is moving more into kind of more in line with the 90s kind of aesthetic of art at this time. He's pushing the hatching a lot on the Hulk mostly, right? Because he's got all those interesting lumpy shapes that you can work with on his body, all the musculature. But still not skimping on the storytelling, you know. You've still got enough panels here getting the dialogue across, because as I said, these comics tend to be somewhat dialogue heavy. When obviously there is a writer with an artist, and then when the artist becomes the writer, unless you're Todd McFarlane, most artists tend to cut down on the dialogue, because that's usually what kind of annoyed them with working with writers, is just too much dialogue. I'm a big believer personally in getting most of the stuff across visually if you can, and then adding in dialogue and stuff to move the story along. But if you can explain it in pictures, you don't have to throw in extra words for nothing. It becomes kind of redundant. We got some great depictions of the Hulk. I love the shadows on his face here. All the hatching is really well done. And the lighting through the window here, very clever, like a two-pronged kind of thing where the light's coming through, hitting the Hulk, right? Creating those strands of shade on him. And also we've got like a negative space, extra bit of shadow in the back there with, you know, that same pattern and the Hulk silhouette all worked in together. I think you got to think about that stuff. That's pretty clever. Like, he spent time and put thought into this, which I think is excellent and just creates a really nice moody panel. So, you know, most of this issue just consists of the Hulk kind of being brash and arrogant because he knows he's basically the alpha male in this scene, in this kind of seedy bar with seedy characters. No one is tougher, more brutish, or seedier, I guess in this case, than the Hulk. Right here, I think we're really close to pure Dale Keown as well. You know, we're getting a lot more of the hatching on the Hulk here. You know, the character's face here slightly cartoony, but still has a solid base. Dale Keown's always been good with faces, with background characters and stuff. These characters, there's a bit of attention brought on them. The tilting horizon always helps to create more dynamic images. It's used here, okay, to turn this character a bit, you know, make everything a little bit more off kilter and probably unstable for this. You know, that's kind of what he's trying to get across, at least unstable for this guy here. And these characters, like I said, there's a bit of foreshadowing here. They'll be important a little bit later, these bystanders at the bar. But all this stuff, just like the drawing in this issue, I don't know if it's the fill-in issue, Dale had a break or something, or was able to catch up, or whatever the reason for the fill-in issue is. I do feel the art just takes a giant step up, not just in the finish, but in the compositions, in the layout, in the dynamism. There's just, an intangible that all of a sudden he just kind of jumps up a level. Here's an interesting, maybe more kind of classic layout with these 4 panels here, which maybe stands out and is a little odd in this issue, but still some great illustrations within each of these panels. Love this down angle on the Hulk. I mention often how hard I think those angles are to draw, so when the artists do them well, I think it's important to point it out because it's a hard shot to do. But again, we're not here at full kind of image storytelling, you know, with just 1 or 2 panels per page. Still got a decent amount of panels, a little bit of overlaps and things going on here to keep it interesting, and a bit of a McFarlane kind of vibe with those, right? He was one of the guys, maybe not the first, but one of the guys where it came to prominence of him overlapping those panels, kind of like you see here, to create an extra sense of depth on the page, right? But again, not this is where those background characters kind of come into play, and there's a discussion with the Hulk here, right? They're all having fun, having drinks together. They're having some sort of philosophical debate here, but you know, like I said, I'm not getting into that because I'm mostly focused once again on the art. We've got this strange vehicle here, which I guess we're still slowly starting to figure out is owned by these characters, I think is what I'm supposed to assume there. Again, like I said, I don't read much of these stories. I'm not that interested, mostly looking at the art. Speaking of which, that's another great shot here. Great shading on the face. Really, I feel in this issue, he's really pushing those overlaps for the first time. He might have done it a few times in prior issues, but really using more of it here. Maybe a little trick, like I said, he saw McFarlane pull off there. So we get to the page turn surprise. And of course, since the Hulk is such a huge character, we need huge characters to challenge him who are just as or more strong than he is. So we're introduced to this character here, Ajax, who apparently thinks he was hurting his friend Atlanta, which is one of the characters we met at the bar. So he wants to kill the Hulk. All of these shots here, great dynamics. Again, right away, he's doing more of these tilted horizon line, tilted angles, which helps to make things instantly more dynamic. This shot here, sometimes I'm a fan of movement lines or speed lines, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes I'm not. I think it works pretty well here because it doesn't obscure too much of the art. And I always like that, you know, perspective with the lines merging at the vanishing point here to bring emphasis towards obviously where the action is happening, where your eye should be guided to. Always think those work well. Love integrating those into my own work. I like the effect here of, I guess, you know, for lack of a better term, kind of a lightsaber is what this character here has, and integrating some elements of Kirby Crackle into the look of the fiery saber, I think works really well, looks cool. Once again, these movement speed lines here work well, very dynamic. Tilted horizon really helps that effect. And I think this is like the first issue where I feel Dale Keene is really kind of creating some exciting dynamic stuff. Not yet where I jumped on to the series as a kid, but pretty close to the stuff I was looking at in later issues around 382, 83, somewhere around there is where I jumped in as a kid. But this definitely resembles that, or is getting closer to that look. The good old 90s vertical panels. The forced perspective here is done really well. And again, I think, like I said, he's not in any way forsaking the storytelling or anything for more exciting art. I just feel the storytelling is just as strong, but is becoming more dynamic and more interesting. And the actual, you know, finish of the art is becoming more in tune with what at that time was a modern aesthetic, right? We still get tinges of the old kind of 80s aesthetic, but as you'll see as we move along in these reviews with these, obviously, artists who really came into their own, became popular in the early 90s, we'll see their early 90s style fully fleshed out within these runs here, right before really all of them kind of find that style just a bit before moving on to Image Comics. Usually near the end of the runs at Marvel. That's kind of a common theme amongst all the Image guys. And all this stuff just looks great. The face on this character here, Ajax, I think is always really well done. A little bit cartoony, but also very illustrative. If you look at a Keane, generally his finish is a very kind of classic illustration finish. that harkens back maybe to older generations of comic art, more so than the Image guys, right? The inking here is still, fairly feathered, possibly still being done by brush. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I could be wrong. I think Mark Farmer inks with a brush. And eventually that full Image style, I think, is a lot has to do with, one, the artists starting to ink themselves, and two, most of them not using the brush. Most of the Image guys used legendarily the Hunt 102 for their inking, right? So that's, I think, a big part of the Image look as well, is the fact that they all kind of used the same tool, right? That brought out that 90s kind of extreme Image style. Still, like I said, still not stingent on the storytelling, but I do find the layouts already just are less boring and made more interesting, even though there's a surprising amount of panels on this page. 1, 4, 6, 10, 11 panels, right? And it doesn't get confusing, and I don't feel like the art's too small. Really well done here. Yeah, these action sequences have really taken a step up here in this issue. Like I said, I feel like this is the issue where things really start to kick off, and we're really getting close to peak Dale Keown, and the art's really interesting, and probably slowly upping the numbers in the sales, I think, because this is kind of the run from here on in. Issue 377 with the Hulk kind of reuniting, or the warring parts of the Hulk kind of uniting into one Hulk figure, also comes with a lot of attention, I guess, and kind of a story change, a changing course with the storyline. And that also brings gives the opportunity to Dale Keown to switch the art up a bit. He's been listening to what the editors have been telling him to do, and slowly but surely he's getting more popular, helping the sales on the Hulk, I would think, and thinking, hey, maybe, this is a period where a lot of the editors are starting to realize that a lot of the artists are the ones selling the Marvel comics. So the artists are to a certain extent given a bit more leeway with what they can do on the books, and what they can contribute, and how far they can go with the artwork. And we're starting to see a little bit of this here. We'll see it more obviously with the Tom McFarlane, the Rob Liefeld reviews. I think the phenomenon in the early 90s is kind of across the board with all of their books that are very popular. They're realizing that it's not necessarily because of the writers, but more so about the artists, right? That was the period that we lived in at that time. The art was kind of the main selling point of the books, which, even today, as much as I think both are important, story, writing, and art, I'm a firm believer that good art will sell a book, even if the writing is not that great. Early Image kind of tells us that, a lot of examples of that, but an amazingly written book with horrible art probably won't sell very much. So those are my thoughts on that. I'm a cartoonist, so I do both, writer and artist. So I try, as I've mentioned before, when I do my own stuff, I try to maybe explain story-wise everything visually as much as possible, and then use words just to either reinforce or move the story along as much as possible. But that's my philosophy. If you have a different one, please feel free to let me know about it in the comment. Let me know your in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on all that. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to write to me as well. I appreciate you all checking out the videos, and I hope everyone out there has an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.